How many of you are sick and tired of people who talk like, yeah, I'm here to support, I'm here to do good work. They don't do anything. And, you know, my friend Donald Trump, now we're not politically active here in all this, but the reason people are afraid of Donald Trump is because he'll go into government and he'll get rid of bloodsuckers and leeches who are making fortunes off of taxpayer money and doing nothing. So anyway, that's the Rich Dad Radio Show. But again, we have a program on good news, great entrepreneurs. You know, for those of you who have $1 million idea inside your head, this is your program. But most importantly, I don't want you to be a scumbag and make $1 million cheating people like most government officials are doing today, or a lot of people just talk about it. Today we have some real people who are real entrepreneurs doing great work. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I'm so happy that we're doing a good news show today. We've talked a lot about the economy, what's happening, and oftentimes it's not the best of news. Oftentimes it's bad news. But this is going to be a really lighthearted show, but a serious show as well, because we've got some great guests who are taking, you know, as Robert, you said, everybody's got $1 million idea, but so often people don't act on it. They don't do anything with it. And these guys have done something and some pretty spectacular things. So it's going to be a hands-on show today. But
they're also doing it to do good work, not just rip people off. So our first guest today, I want to thank our friends at KRLD Radio, especially Bob Waterman out there, because I was out in Dallas with Bob Waterman, and he took me to Howdy Homemade Ice Cream in Dallas. And I go, Bob, you know, I'm fat enough as it is. Why do I want to go to Howdy Homemade Ice Cream? He says, because they're doing great things. And he was talking about a young man named Tom Landis who, I mean, it's just touching. You know, we have a lot of people who need jobs. You know, they're called special needs kids. But nobody hires them. So Tom Landis, who was a young man who got fed up with all these people saying, yeah, we hired special needs or disability, but they don't.
Or we should do that, or we should do that, or wouldn't it be great if, da-da-da-da, but nobody does it.
Yeah, and so Tom got sick and tired of it, as he calls the black tie fundraisers and 5K runs to raise money, but nobody does anything. So that is the pure power of the spirit of an entrepreneur. They get PO'd enough and go and do something. So I went to Howdy Homemade Ice Cream, and it's this little dinky little ice cream studio that makes fantastic ice cream. But Tom Landis handles special needs kids that most restaurants will not hire because of liability factors. But they say they hire them, but they don't. And so I met Tom Landis here, and it touched my heart. I mean, it is a spiritual, you know, being a spiritual entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, really working, taking huge risks to do good for the community. And so I'm very happy to say Howdy Homemade Ice Cream is fantastic ice cream. Tom Landis, you know, hired Bob Waterman's daughter, Happy Waterman, and she is very happy working there, and he trains them to work.
And Happy has Down syndrome, as a lot of these employees do, and autism. And he makes the case of that the special needs employees are, number one, they're great employees, and number two, he's filling a need because so many people, as you said, Robert, are not hiring special need employees.
Yeah, so I'd like to welcome to the program Tom Landis. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Robert and Kim. I'm so excited to be on with you guys today.
Thank you for the work you're doing. I really appreciate it. You're making waves out there.
So tell me about those scumbags who have black tie affairs and 5K runs but don't do anything.
Well, man, it just seems like every weekend, I've been in the restaurant business for 20 years, owned 13 different restaurants, and, man, just all the time someone's putting together a 5K run. There's a nice black tie affair or something with the hopes of trying to create jobs, and they might raise 100,000, whatever, but I don't see the jobs being created. And man, you know, trying to take a spiritual journey on this, you go to churches, and, man, people are all raising up their arms, and I'm not seeing what they're raising their arms for. I'm seeing the glint of $10,000 Rolexes on 10,000 member churches. And if everyone in Dallas, Texas that went to church that raised their hand for Jesus or God or whoever took their stupid Rolex watch and hawked it, man, we could open about 50 restaurants tomorrow. But today, I want to talk specifically to the you've got 1.5 million listeners out there, Robert, Kim. You know what? 26,315 of those if we're looking at the stats, are going to have a child born on the autistic spectrum. And, man, maybe it all kind of comes down to this. If we're kind of trying to be spiritual, is, man, there's nothing more spiritual than fishing. And there's a great fishing story about a group of guys that are fishing all night, and they're fishing on one side of the boat, and they don't catch anything. And that's the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry has a 300% turnover rate, and it also has horrible customer service, and we all know it. But you know what? There's a dude on the shore, and he's saying fish on the other side of the boat. And on that other side of the boat, in Dallas, Texas alone, there's 240,000 special needs fish, 240,000 adults of the age to be working. And you know what they want? They want, and they desperately pray for, what you and I take for granted. And we've forgotten that there's 240,000 adults that would kill for a chance to have a job.
So how did you start Howdy Homemade Ice Cream? Why in a very rich neighborhood?
You know what? If you live in Dallas, Texas, and you happen to be a Dallas Cowboys fan, and you're not so sure of the leadership, of the ownership, you got to root for an underdog because we ain't winning. And I've always been a fan of the underdog. And, man, when you look at the underdog, you know what you see is you see a person with a fight in them. And to me, this restaurant business is not about food. God stopped making food 2,000 years ago, stopped making the animals, the bread, or the plants and all that. It's about people. And, in 2000, I kind of looked at it, and the restaurant industry in Dallas, Texas was this. Put the Hispanic people in the kitchen and the pretty white people up front, but the pretty white people up front always turn over. So you dig into your awesome Hispanic workforce, you teach them English, you move them to the front of the house, and boom, you change the restaurant industry somewhat. First guy I ever hired 20 years ago, he's still with me. Man, he's gone from being a busboy that doesn't speak English to owning his own home. And last time I checked, that's the American dream.
Tom, so Tom, I just want to make a point too that your Howdy ice cream is it's a very profitable business. This is not a charity business. This is a profitable business. So I just want to ask why are special needs employees, why are they good for business?
The reason is that this is a business about people, not food. And man, God created people with Down syndrome to kick every lawyer's tail in being great at customer service. And we all know that. And not only that, but man, everybody listening to the show has got to be thinking, you know what? I know a kid with Down syndrome, and maybe he's at my pool in the summer, or maybe he's folding towels at the country club or whatever. And man, he's there through thick and thin. Businessmen are opportunistic, and once they see, wait a minute, you restaurant fool owners that have a 300% turnover rate, you know what? Don't be afraid to share love and show love to people. And when you do, especially people with special needs, man, they will take a bullet for you. They will show up early. They'll be an employee for a lifetime. Isn't that? And yes, you're exactly right, Kim. This is not a feel-good story. If all Howdy Homemade is a feel-good story, then I fail. But if in a year or two I can turn over my keys to one of my employees with special needs and they can run it and own it, not be a little bag boy at the grocery store or rolling silverware for a tax write-off at a big restaurant corporation, but they can truly own it, and that's absolutely going to happen.
Once again,
then you know what? I succeed, and I can go fishing.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today, our special guest is about the good news. His name is Tom Landis, owner of Howdy Homemade Ice Cream in Dallas, Texas. And it's a profitable business. The community supports it. The football team supports it. And it's really it's a spiritual entrepreneurial story, because Tom Landis actually went out and did something. This is what entrepreneurs do. So let me ask you this, Tom. What do you have to? What's the difference between hiring special needs kids? What training do you have for them? What do you do that may be a little bit different? And what are many questions? But what are some of the concerns that regular restaurant owners are afraid of that you overcome?
You'd have to ask the other restaurant owners, because I don't play in their reindeer games. I don't get invited to the reindeer games. And since I don't really see them doing a whole lot, I don't really care what their thoughts are. I'd say this, though. You know what? Is sometimes the biggest obstacle to people with special needs are their parents that are treating them like babies, and the special needs teachers and all of that will bring them in, put them behind the counter, have them have their arms resting on the counter, and they come in and say, "Oh, you're doing a great job." No, that dude needs to be fired. But what we do is we try and take a chapter from Gene Stallings, the legendary NFL coach and college coach, won a national championship at Alabama, but he never let his players stand around. If you're standing on your feet, you're moving around. You know what? And you're going to be nice to every customer. You're going to smile. We're hard on our employees. You know why? Because once they come in that door, we don't see them as someone with special needs. We don't see them with a disability. We see them with an ability. But, you know, and it's the very toughest part of my job. But you know what? It's also the way we're supposed to do it. You know what? We got a way. We're going to train you. We're going to love on you. But once we know you can do that, and you know, they're going to do it. But sometimes, you know what? People with special needs are just like everyone else. And sometimes that axe has to be dropped, and they have to be fired, and you move on to the next person.
Where exactly is Howdy Homemade Ice Cream? And I can vouch, it is fantastic. I had the blueberry ice cream when I shouldn't have had it, but I couldn't resist. It was fantastic. And the best thing about it is the special needs kids working there, they're responsible, and they're very, very excited about working, which is kind of novelty today. People excited about working. So how do people find out more about Howdy Homemade Ice Cream?
Google Howdy Homemade and see some of the videos that are on there. I think it'll fire people up, and I hope it'll fire them up enough that they'll go up with their own invention, their own creation, their own business idea of how to do it. And I guarantee you this, that your definition of rich will change when you start working with people with special needs. And I think there's a tremendous monetary opportunity there, but way more than that, I think you'll see how much better you become, how many of your problems are so trivial, and how many of your other employees will be encouraged and made better.
Wish you all the best. May you expand and spread your love all over the planet here. So the Rich Dad Radio Show is dedicated to the good news people who are actually doing something for other people, making a difference in the world. I want to thank Tom Landis, owner of Howdy Homemade Ice Cream, and one of his best employees, Happy Waterman, and her father is Bob Waterman of KRLD Radio. So I want to thank you for all this. Any comments on?
Well, I love that segment because I really do see the similarity between what Tom Landis is doing at Howdy Homemade and what Rich Dad is doing. Is it's really a shift in mindset on how you perceive finance, but in Howdy's, it's a shift in mindset about how you look at special needs people.
And how you help other people. Not just yourself, you know.
Yes. And his whole thing was about love. It's all about love. It's all about people. It's all about greeting people, making them feel good, making them happy, all of it. So,
and as I said, what's kind of interesting is I'm really sick and tired of the bloodsuckers and leeches who run our government. You know, they just suck our taxpayer dollars, and they really don't care about anybody else but themselves. So to all you people voting for those scumbags and leeches, think about it again. And now we have a very, very special guest. His name is Larry White. Now, let me tell you why Larry is so special. I was invited by a man named Tom Forese. He's the Arizona Corporations Commissioner. I have no idea what they did, but he invited me down to the state capitol in Arizona here in Phoenix to talk about entrepreneurship. And we have a video on entrepreneurship and all this. And at this meeting, I meet Larry White, and he is the owner of Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. So here's this crowd of about 50 people. And I love to eat. So I ran up there and I got myself a piece of chicken. And everybody wanted to talk to me. So I ate the chicken and I'm shaking hands and all this. And when I turned around, all the chicken was gone. And ever since then, I said, God, I've got to go buy that Lolo's chicken and get more chicken. Then I met Larry, the guy who started the business, the entrepreneur. And I found out not only does he make great chicken, it's a cult following here in Phoenix. I mean, so many
We
people.
love cult following businesses.
Yeah.
We do.
At the Rich
Rich
Dad.
Dad is a cult business as well.
Yeah, and there's so many guys go, oh, can I have some chicken? You know, at Rich Dad, they don't talk about Kentucky Fried Chicken. They talk about Lolo's chicken. And I tell you, it is fantastic. I love to eat. It's fantastic chicken. But what's really interesting about Larry also is he spent some time in county, which means he was behind bars. And Larry and I were talking just before this show started is that I never spent time behind bars, but I've been in handcuffs. And when we were younger, we were a little hard-headed, and we do things we shouldn't do, and we think we can control the world. And it's really a good time. You know, like when I was up on the stand swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I figured I better start telling the truth because these guys are serious here.
Exactly.
So I met Larry there. We have a lot in common. We're entrepreneurs. We want to do good work, but we also understand what it's like to do some time. Any comments, Kim?
There was a wake-up call for you. You were sharing there was a bit of a wake-up call when you were,
What does
when you were
county jail
behind
mean?
bars. Yeah.
Definitely, it was a wake up call. 1997, I spent a little small stint behind.
How long?
About 11 weeks.
Oh, that'll wake you up.
Yeah, trying to get your bail money together. Bail money was set at $250,000.
Bail?
Yeah, for
Wow.
a nice guy like me. Can you imagine
How old
that?
were you in 1987?
Ah, man, what was I? Probably about 24, 25.
And what were you charged with?
I was charged with drug trafficking. I was
Good.
caught with a large amount of cocaine.
I see.
And
Very
what,
profitable business that way.
It was profitable, but it was easy come, easy go.
Right. So when you were sitting in county, what kind of revelations came to you? What did you sort of realize?
You know, I sat there in county. I realized how much I disappointed my family, my grandmother, my father, how much of an embarrassment I am to my children. You know, I had this facade out there like I was a clean-cut, cookie-cutter guy, and I was doing other stuff behind the scenes. And I didn't want to bring that shame to my family name ever again.
Did you have a regular job?
At that time, no.
Oh, okay.
But as soon as I got out got bailed out, once my bail got reduced, I went back to working for the family business. I grew up working for the family business, Mrs. White's Golden Rule Cafe. And
Is it here in Phoenix?
it's here in Phoenix. They
It's
started in
still around?
1964.
Okay.
Wow.
Was that one run by your grandmother?
It's run by my grandmother and my father and
okay.
my sister. It's a family business. So I always worked there throughout high school.
So
But,
you were going for the fast money.
I was going for the fast money.
Yeah,
I needed more.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and you just wasn't getting enough as a bus boy, waiter, and that didn't work out. So I got out and started working back in the family business, and I still had grown accustomed to certain things in life, and I needed to make more money. And that's at that time, my grandmother was closed on weekends. She was only open Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 7:30. So the restaurant sat empty over the weekend, and I asked her, well, can I try this chicken and waffle thing? We used to go to L.A. back in the day, and we used to go to a place called Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. And I came home. I started making chicken and waffles for friends and family. 2 guests turned to 4, 4 turned to 30, 30 turned to 60. Before you know it, I need to start charging for this.
Or you're going to go broke.
Exactly. So my grandmother allowed me to showcase Lolo's Chicken and Waffles weekends only in her restaurant in 1997.
And what was her company? What was her business's name?
Her business was Mrs. White's Golden Rule Cafe.
Jeez.
So
What part of Phoenix was it in?
downtown Phoenix, 8th Street and Jefferson.
Okay.
We're just 1 block east of Chase Fields.
Oh, wow.
Home of the
baseball stadium.
Yeah, home of the Arizona
Where the Diamondbacks
Diamondbacks.
play. Yeah.
Exactly. So for 5 years, I operated out of her restaurant weekends only.
Wow.
Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. I would reopen.
So you went from making fast money to making slow
Slow
but
money,
hardworking and
hardworking
Yep.
money. And
Okay.
cooking came natural. I knew how to cook. It was in my bloodline.
But what makes your chicken so good?
Oh man,
You
we
have
just,
to kill me if you tell me, right?
I got to kill you if I tell you, but we just put that twist on it.
It's so good, you guys. I'm not kidding you.
Grandma taught me how to cook. We make our own special seasonings. We have our own waffle mix and hot sauce and our own grits and stuff like that.
Right.
But
So you went from weekends, 5 years on the weekends, and today you've got what?
well, we're coming up on store number 8. Store number 8 will be open in June 2016.
So you're
Store number 8. Wow.
Store number 8.
Are you expanding by franchising and company stores and all that?
Somewhat, yes. Yes. We do offer franchise opportunities. Right now, we're currently just doing company stores.
And you're opening in Dallas this summer?
Yeah, we're opening in Dallas, South Lake in June.
Go to Lolo's at South Lake.
So all you guys listen to KRLD, look for
Lolo's Chicken and Waffles, South Lake.
All right. It's
you got one in Vegas?
Yeah, there's one in Las Vegas off of Rainbow and Lake Mead Boulevard in North Vegas.
We got
and
friends
all
in
of you
Vegas.
listen to KNXT and North in Vegas. Go to Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. It's fantastic. I wouldn't be talking about it. I'm salivating right now thinking about it.
Right on, man.
KXNT.
So KXNT
in Vegas.
KXNT Las Vegas.
So how did you go from doing the weekends to your first store? What was that leap?
Well, for 5 years, I'm working 7 days a week because Monday through Friday, I'm working for my grandmother. And then on the weekends, I'm working for myself. I'm the waiter, so I'm in contact with the customer. And I'm talking to a lot of customers, and they're coming in during her business hours. Where's the chicken and waffles?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
So for 5 years, I just had to tell them it's a weekend thing only. So in 2000, I got a little bitty house, a little building. It was zoned residential. It was 800 square feet. And it took me 2 years to save up all my tips from working at Mrs. White's and the weekend money to rezone it to commercial and turned it into my very first restaurant, freestanding, in 2002.
Fantastic.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today we first talked to Tom Landis of Howdy Homemade Ice Cream in Dallas, Texas, and now we're talking to Larry White, Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. He's talking about how spending time was a wake-up call for him. But we're talking about the good news. We spent a lot of time on bad news about how the scumbags are ripping us off, the bloodsuckers and leeches in government. But we really have good news today. These young men are actually doing great work via entrepreneurship and business and all that. You can listen to this program at your time and your schedule. A Rich Dad Radio app available at the App Store, and all of our programs are archived at RichDadRadio.com. The reason we archive them is so you can listen to this again and again. And if you have friends or family or business partners, this is a fantastic program to listen to because it's about how you can do a lot of good and make good money, because that's what this program is about. And our guest today is Larry White, and he's talking about how he went to working at his grandmother's, using the asset, her restaurant, and starting your own business. And now you're in 8 locations.
Yeah, coming up on store number 8.
Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
And you work with your wife, don't you?
Oh, yes. I work with my wife, my wonderful business partner.
And what is her name?
Her name is Rashida.
And how is that? A lot of people say, I don't want to work with my wife. Kim and I work 24/7 together.
Man, it's hard enough just living together.
Amen.
But, just like we was talking before the show, there's no such thing as leaving it at work.
No.
Because if there's a discussion that starts at work, it continues at home.
Uh-huh.
And
It actually can make the marriage stronger in many cases. That's my experience with Robert and myself.
True. It can make it marriage stronger, but sometimes you can be so frustrated on how things went at work, you can go to sleep with your back to one another.
Yeah.
So that's not
well,
cool.
Here's the other thing I wanted to say is that with the when you saw this weekend, you as an entrepreneur, you saw an opportunity. Here's this place sitting empty for 2 days. You saw the opportunity. You went in. You took advantage of that opportunity, and then also, just like we say at Rich Dad, you're now expanding into corporate stores and franchises. You've now brought on partners who are very experienced in both realms. So now you've got this team around you.
Correct.
It's not you just doing it by yourself and with your wife, Rashida.
Yeah.
You've got this whole team that you've built up to expand and to grow, which I just think is brilliant.
Well, thank you.
Well, congratulations. So all of you right now who's sitting at home going, God, I hate my job, or, I have got $1 million idea. That's what this program is for. And you don't have to be a scumbag to get rich here. So the Rich Dad Radio Show is about how you can be a good person and do a lot of good in the community and make a lot of money. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money.
Learn about money and investing while having fun. Go to RichDad.com to play the Cashflow Classic game online. Your banker will never ask for your report card. What's most important in entrepreneurship and investing is your financial statement. So go to RichDad.com and play Cashflow Classic to learn anytime, anywhere. Start playing today and take your first steps out of the rat race. Meet and interact with players who have the same goals and aspirations. Best of all, it's free. Go to RichDad.com and start changing your life today by playing Cashflow Classic at RichDad.com.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The theme of today's program is entrepreneurship is really about what can I do for somebody else. It's not necessarily how much money can I make. What can I do for you? And too many people come to work with an attitude, well, how much am I going to get paid? How little can I work? And then when they're not successful, they become politicians. Anyway, today we have a great politician. Not really a politician. He works for the Arizona Corporation Commission. He is an entrepreneur himself.
He is the Arizona Corporation Commissioner.
Yeah, he is the guy. His name is Tom Ferriz.
I appreciate that massive backhand compliment.
Well, Tom, I haven't lowered the boom yet. So wait, hang on. So anyway, Tom is a guy that really encourages people to be entrepreneurs because he is one. I met him. He did a video on entrepreneurship. The whole government, the governor, Doug Ducey, is a good friend of mine. It's Cold Stone Creamery. And Arizona's government is really pushing entrepreneurship. So I went to this meeting with Tom Ferriz, and that's where I met Larry White and his famous fried chicken. And I only got one piece. So
but we have more here in the studio now.
And
so
I'm getting hungry thinking about it.
We're smelling it as we sit here.
So what I want to talk about, Tom, is how Arizona's Corporation Commission is really encouraging, and how does a budding entrepreneur or existing entrepreneurs work with you to expand entrepreneurship through government?
I know I'm going to take some punches in this interview, and I can't wait. Let me tell you first of all. So I think one of the biggest objectives of mine, and I've Robert and Kim, I've talked to you about this in the past. I want to get entrepreneurs involved. If that means having them run for office, for city council, for the legislature, if that means just to get them engaged and testifying in committees, the more entrepreneurs get involved, the more entrepreneurial this country will get. I'm an entrepreneur. My background, I've started several companies. Some of them have been moderately successful. Some of them have been utter failures. I had a company that was a PR company, and that's how I met Larry. And one of my favorite stories is when I first met Larry, we had a friend in common. He had one store. This is 10 years ago. I don't even know if Larry remembers this. And I went to sit down with him in his first location, and it was a house turned into a restaurant in South Phoenix. And I gave him my pitch on my PR services. And Larry had one single piece of chicken on a plate, and it was sitting in front of him. And he said, my business is just growing. He said, I'd love to have your help, but I'm not going to be able to pay you in money. I'll pay you in other ways. And he slowly slid the plate of chicken.
That's the entrepreneur in you.
Smooth operator, you.
Let me tell you, I laughed so hard. We became instant friends, and it has been a joy to watch his empire grow. He will reach the point shortly where he has more locations franchised out of the state than in the state. And Larry White is an Arizona treasure. For those that want to get more involved, I'd say, first of all, government's responsibility is to back out of the way of business. Government doesn't create jobs. Government does not create entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have a certain DNA. They have a certain personality. And we need to make sure as government that we're not creating regulation and bureaucracy that make that more difficult. So what we need is entrepreneurs to get involved and to help me and others like Governor Ducey make sure that we have the right regulation and the right environment so that they can be successful.
Well, Tom, let me ask a quick question. As an entrepreneur, every time I talk to, not every time, but most of the times I talk to government bureaucrats like my poor dad, I'm talking to a dead deer most of the time. They don't have a deer in the headlights. They've already been run over. And they're just sitting there sucking cash out of the government system here. So who would oppose what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is the way that it works. Each government department has a little portion of power, and it is natural. There's a few real bad actors, but the biggest problem is the natural tendency is for the department and the people in their department to start to build a silo around their power, to start to grow that department, because once they're given a little bit of power, they want to keep it, and they want to keep other people out of it.
So it's exactly opposite of a business where we want to have as few people as possible to increase profitability. A government bureaucrat will want more people, which increases costs, so they can have more power. Is that really what you're saying?
That you just hit it on the head.
So let me ask this, Larry. What does Tom Ferries and the Arizona Corporation Commission done for you? I mean, have they helped you at all?
Well, Tom has helped being a loyal customer for many, many years.
He likes to eat like chicken.
How can big government help me?
Yeah.
Eat at Lolo's. The more they eat at Lolo's, the more I can employ people, the more taxes we pay.
But have you had any roadblocks or government, BS?
No, I haven't had any roadblocks or government BS. No.
Just keep going?
Just keep going.
You had your one store, and Tom, you went to that store, the little house, and then you grew it to now you have corporate stores, but you're also doing franchising. You're now going into franchising.
Yes.
At the break, you were saying that people would come to Arizona, see your store, and go, well, yeah, of course it works here because you've been here so many years, but is it going to work in my hometown?
And that was the whole point of opening up these company stores outside the state of Arizona.
In Dallas and Las Vegas.
Dallas, Las Vegas, Omaha. We wanted to show that the brand can be proven in other markets.
So you created the model. You created a model for the franchisees to see.
Correct.
And how's that working?
It's doing very well. We expect Dallas to do the same. Omaha is, it's doing pretty good for Omaha. Omaha's not a big city like Phoenix, Dallas, or Vegas.
How'd you choose Omaha?
I chose Omaha because some of my franchise partners, they live in Omaha. I have a franchise partner that lives right there in Lincoln, and the other one lives in Omaha.
Right. So, Tom, what does the Arizona Corporation Commissioner do to support business other than, say, give us a hand and things? Because, most of us are pretty busy. What can we do other than just support? What does that mean to you?
We've created a number of initiatives in order to reduce regulation. And one of the things that we've done is to reach out to entrepreneurs. Some of them have done episodes of our TV show called Inspire, which both of you have done and has been very helpful in teaching people about how business works and how entrepreneurs work. But really, what's the most fun for me in my job and the most helpful is when businesses come and spend 15, 20 minutes in our office and talk to us about how their business is going, the challenges, and, we've got 9 departments at the commission. We handle utilities, we handle investment securities, we handle business formation, we handle telecommunication, but our office works very closely with Governor Ducey's office, with the legislature, with the Secretary of State's office. So oftentimes when business comes and sits down with us, even if the issue isn't at our office, we're able to help them and connect them to other areas, because I'm happy to say we're in a golden era in Arizona where across the board all of our statewide offices are currently held by people that are very pro-small business.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki of the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today is the good news about how becoming a social entrepreneur can really do a lot of good for the community as well as the government. So, Tom, let me ask you this. Do most governments, in the states as well as because our program is worldwide, do most governments have a department like what you guys are?
I wish that I could say yes, but my experience says otherwise. One of the biggest challenges with any government is that big government and big business work together. They build up a wall and they shut small business out. And so in some areas, in some states, you'll find that they understand that, like a baseball team, A baseball team is successful long-term if it has a great farm system. Well, for our country and our state, small business is our farm system. So tomorrow's economy is based on where small business is today. And what I'd say is, for your listeners around the country and around the world, what they can do if they're willing and they hear that call to public service and they're willing to put in some sacrifice, even if it's just a little bit to create a better environment for their state or their country, they can create a small business organization with very little money and get involved at the legislative level so that their voice is heard. Small business doesn't have the money to hire lobbyists, but what they have is a built-in army of very scrappy, very resourceful people, and if they put in a little bit of time, they can make a very, very big difference.
And that's why I want to join this program, Tom, is because you're one of the few government bureaucrats. You're the Arizona Corporation Commissioner. But you are so proactive for small business. You and I have met a number of times at different events you put on just to let small business know that the government of Arizona is behind them. And that is fantastic.
So I would like to ask one question, first of Larry and then to Tom, is if there was one tip that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur, because we're going to have two different points of view. We're going to have from the entrepreneur and then the entrepreneurial politician, we'll call it. But so, Larry, what's one tip you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur? Somebody's got this idea and they don't know how to get started. What do you tell them?
Drive. That one tip is drive. They got to be driven.
I would say that's correct.
It's got to be something. There's got to be a passion in there. What was your drive?
My drive was to take care of my family and be successful.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And Tom, what would you say from the government side? What are you looking for in entrepreneurs to come up to you?
Yeah, what's a tip for an entrepreneur? What would you tell them?
You know, from a government perspective, I don't think government should be involved at the business level as little as possible. And from my own personal experience, my son, who's 15, is starting a business. He plays Cashflow, and he's a big fan of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he and I have been talking about his business, and he said, and this is so important. He said, "Yeah, but what if I fail?" And from my own experience and from what I've seen time and time again, I said, if you fail, it's a blessing, and you learn from it, and you pick yourself back up, and you do it again.
Amen.
That's the secret.
And that's why Larry says you got to have that drive, because when you fall down, if you don't have that drive, you're not going to get back up.
That's right.
So Larry White and Lolo's Chicken and Waffles, please go visit them. I want to thank you for being part of this program. Thanks for telling your story.
Congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
You and Rashida. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So I want to thank Tom Landis, owner of Howdy Homemade Ice Cream in Dallas, Texas. Also, our second guest was Larry White, is Larry White, Lolo's Chicken and Waffles, which I didn't know this, but he has a cult following. Already the people are lining up in the Rich Dad Company to get their share of it, and I told them to bring more, but there's a lot of people who are going to fight for this stuff.
and he's in Phoenix, he's in Dallas, he's in Las Vegas, he's in Omaha. So if you're in those cities, go check out Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. Chicken.
And the thing I love about Larry's story was that he was in county, which means he was spending a little time visiting the government on the government payroll there. But that was a wake-up call. And we all go through these wake-up calls. And so, again, his website is loloschickenandwaffles.com. And I want to thank Tom Fores. He's Arizona Corporation's commissioner. It's how the government is working, especially the government of Arizona, to promote entrepreneurship.
But I do think it was interesting what Tom said is the advice to an entrepreneur is don't let the government get involved.
And it's interesting, too, because Governor Doug Ducey, I was just with Governor Ducey last week with Mayor Giuliani in New York City. And I remember Doug and I sitting at some little restaurant drinking beer when he was thinking about starting Cold Stone Creamery. And now he's governor of Arizona, and he's really pushing hard to make sure we have more entrepreneurs and less bureaucracy in Arizona. And the thing I love about Tom is he works across the border also, unlike my friend Donald who wants to build a wall. So we're now the most popular part of our program is to Ask Robert. And you can submit your questions to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. And I'm very happy to say Larry White of Lolo's Chicken and Waffles has agreed to stay with us and answer your questions of Ask Robert. So, Melissa, what's your first question?
Our first question today comes from Amber in Buffalo, New York. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Her question is this. I've been working from my home on an e-business for the last couple of years. I know I'm ready for a storefront, but my family keeps telling me it will never work. What's your advice for dealing with people close to you being unsupportive and negative about your business ideas?
It's part of being an entrepreneur. You'll always have people who are more the employee or the job security mentality, and they're just saying, I love you, I don't want you to screw up and fail, which you probably will. I mean, our family said the same thing, right?
Well, when we first came out with our cash flow board game, we were told it will never work. You're never going to sell anything. It's going to be a disaster. And today, that was 1996. And today, it's one of our 2 best-selling products, along with Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
And her family read my book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They thought it was the biggest bunch of BS you'd ever heard.
They were polite. They were polite about it.
And, her father was an employee. He wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? Your dad?
My dad did, yes. And my dad wanted to work up the corporate ladder and be the president of a company. That was his goal.
But he also had an opportunity to be a very wealthy entrepreneur.
Yes, he did.
But he never stepped across the line.
No.
And so I think, as Larry White said, is drive. You got to want to do it. Be willing to fail and all that. We just said it's true.
You got to be driven. First of all, you got to believe in yourself. Don't worry about what other people say. In the beginning, when I started Lolo's Chicken and Waffles and got my little house in 2000, it took a lot of elbow grease for me to get it up to par, to turn it into a commercial restaurant.
What did your wife think?
My wife said nobody will ever eat in this dump. My own uncle.
Was it the food or the place?
It was the place. It was a dump. It was a dump. And my uncle even said, hey, are you sure about this? Are you okay in the head?
Yeah.
They just didn't see the vision, but I saw the vision.
Yeah.
But the other thing that happens for a lot of people is that they're just trying to protect you also, right?
True.
They're worried about you. Now, the thing for Amber and what Larry did and what Kim and I did is he had experience. She's already tested her idea. She's online and all this. Now she's ready to take the next step to go live with Storefront. For all of you out there, that's probably the most important thing. What are you doing to practice? I've met so many guys who get fired, and then, like my poor dad, he lost his job because he ran for lieutenant governor of Hawaii. He loses his job, and then he buys his franchise, and he loses everything. The guy had no experience. He didn't practice. It was an ice cream franchise. But he had no real-world experience, which is one of my problems with most academic types, is they think all you have to do is have the right answer. Well, as all of us in this room will tell you, there's no such thing as one right answer. You got to have multiple right answers, right, Larry?
Exactly.
And I would also say to Amber, she's getting advice from family. I wouldn't seek advice from family unless they're very, very successful entrepreneurs. And if you want to get some advice, go find a successful entrepreneur as a mentor or an advisor and get their advice.
But you'd be surprised, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are willing to help another entrepreneur.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of entrepreneurs who won't help, but when you find one that will help you without asking for anything, then you have a great mentor there.
Exactly.
And that's how you build your business. You find great people to help you. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Adam in Phoenix. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Adam, go to Lolo's.
Adam's question is this. How do you protect your business from employees who leave and try to take your customers with them?
Well, that's standard operating people for people without much imagination. It happens to us all the time. People knock us off, rip us off, pretend they're me on the site and all this. It's just part of human nature. It's like Larry did the noble thing. He asked his grandmother, mind if I use the space you're not using so I can test my idea? And your grandmother loves you and all this, and she was willing to do that. Or he could have just stolen her thing and, right? You did it the honorable way.
I did it the honorable way. And being honorable, God is going to bless you. And nothing bad prospers. So we just did it the right way.
Any comments, Kim?
Well, I would say this to Adam in terms of, yes, if you're so concerned about somebody stealing your idea, number one is it's not just the idea. It's the whole business around it. Larry, somebody could go take your chicken and open up a Lolo's too, but they don't have the business, they don't have the team behind them, they don't have the experience, they don't have the marketing, they don't have the systems, all of that in place. So we hear it a lot. I'm going to go take what you're doing and I'm going to do it better, but they don't have that whole system and the whole, which we call the business investment triangle behind them. So.
Exactly. Like nowadays, you got even McDonald's that's coming out with a chicken and waffle breakfast sandwich. Many people can try to take your concept and try to duplicate it. But at Lolo's, we're not just a restaurant. We create an experience.
Yes.
So you can open up across the street and down the street, but our customers aren't going to follow you if you're not going to give out that same vibe. And it takes Lolo to set the tone for the vibe in the restaurant. And without me, baby, you ain't got nothing.
I love it.
And that's the spirit. You know, I mean, Larry's spirit goes out with his business and all that. And that's why we're talking about, you know, business is really a spiritual experience out there. You can give, and there's also people that will steal. And trust me, when you're in business, somebody's going to try and rip you off.
Oh, yeah.
It's just part of business. Next question, Melissa.
Okay, our next question comes from Jesse in Cleveland, Ohio. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Jesse says, Robert and Kim, I'm interested in your opinions on the following. Personally, what role does ethics play in your investment decision making? In regards to loopholes or certain laws, do you feel that you are morally obligated to, quote, do the right thing regardless of the circumstances, or do you feel that there is a capitalist obligation to exploit the law or loopholes for personal gain?
Fantastic question. And the reason I was glad to have Tom Faries of Arizona Corporation Commission on this, it really depends on who you talk to. You know, most people look at this thing called loopholes, and it's the reason we have Tom Wheelwright, whose book is Tax-Free Wealth. You see, the number one thing about America, you have got to want to be rich. You know, if you don't want to be rich, then get job security. It's just in your beingness. And most people just want job security. They like more money, but they're not going to take a risk. So the whole tax system of America is written for people who want to be rich, who want to take risk, who most importantly want to do what the government wants done. So the reason Kim and I get massive tax breaks for real estate is because the government wants us to provide housing for people who cannot afford housing. So we get massive tax breaks for that. And most people who went to school, like my poor dad, all they want is a house for themselves. You know, they want a job for themselves. They want a paycheck for themselves. They want job security. They're not really taking a risk. So the government pounds on them through taxes. So what one person sees as a loophole, we see as a tax incentive. And it really is a point of view. And the reason I have very low respect for most of the, you know, I like Bernie Sanders and all this, but he wants to give everybody everything for free. You got to be kidding me. Who's going to pay for it? Well, the rich, of course. They always say that. And that's where our school teachers are. As a basic rule, most school teachers are socialists, like my poor dad and Bernie Sanders. Any comments, Kim?
Well, yes, because it's interesting that she uses the word ethics. I mean, we always want to be, always do our best to be above the law, what's legal, ethical, and moral. But she's talking about loopholes as if they're unethical.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, they're just written for people who want to be in business and invest.
The government wants us to be rich. The tax laws want us to be rich. If you just want to work for yourself and get a little measly little paycheck, well, naturally the government doesn't need you because you're not helping anybody else. I mean, Larry, how hard is it to have employees?
It's very hard to keep great employees. Not everybody has that entrepreneurship in them.
No, they do not.
You know, and just like you said, those that are here to be workers and those are here to be leaders. It all depends on what category you fall in.
So they give Larry White the tax breaks because he does what the government wants done. He hires people. He does real estate. He spends money. You know, when you hire employees, they pay taxes.
That's right. We're paying taxes. We're creating jobs. And we're also giving second and 2-time, 3-time opportunities for ex-felons, people like myself that made mistakes in the past. When they come to Lolo's, we give them a second chance at life.
Fantastic.
Here's a job.
Fantastic. Whether it's a loophole or a tax incentive is a point of view. If you're a socialist like Bernie Sanders or a communist, you could be a good person, but you don't have the same point of view. As we say at Rich Dad, all coins have 3 sides.